Good evening and welcome back to Newsnight. Coming up tonight, we'll have your international and national news, as well as your local Pittsburgh news, like which Pittsburgh businesses' employees were protesting a vaccine mandate last week, and which political figure's wife is testifying his abuse. All this and more coming up on Newsnight. Good evening, I'm Nick Konopka. Tonight we'll start off with international news about Pompeii. After being hidden for almost 1,500 years, slave quarters were recently uncovered in an archaeological dig of Pompeii. The well-preserved quarters were found in the town of Civita Juliana, just north of central Pompeii. Civita Juliana has been an active archaeological site since 2017 to get ahead of looters who began to pillage the area without care of trained archaeologists. Earlier this year, a ceremonial chariot was discovered at the site, making this the second major discovery this year. Within the quarters, archaeologists were able to identify 3 beds, storage vases, a chamber pot, and a wooden chest containing what is assumed to be horse restraints. The smaller sizes of the beds point researchers to the conclusion that the slaves may have been children or even possibly an entire family. Due to the intact state of many of the beds, researchers are able to properly cast the artifacts in plaster for further study and exhibition. Following the discovery of the room, Italian Minister of Culture, Dario Franceschini, touted the discovery as a sign of the vast culture of Italy and a reason for tourists to come visit the country. General Director of the Pompeii Archaeological Park, Gabriel Zucca-Trigel, noted that this find is a unique perspective, since Pompeii discoveries are, quote, almost always through the point of view of the elites, end quote. Now that the slave quarters have been found, archaeologists will begin the process of plaster casting and testing the materials in the room. After 2 failed attempts, Congress finally passed President Biden's infrastructure package with bipartisan support. Not to be mistaken for the Build Back Better Act, which contains funding for universal pre-K, Medicare, and family leave, this bill will invest in an unprecedented $1.2 trillion of federal spending into America's infrastructure. The bulk of the funding will be allocated towards repairs to current roads and bridges, as well as brand new projects to modernize the country's transportation system. There will also be a $1 billion investment to reconstruct stretches of highway that previously cut off black residents from their surrounding communities. Funding will also be allocated to replace the toxic lead pipes that currently service over 9.2 million homes per EPA estimates. Expanded funding for nationwide broadband internet access, a priority of both Democrats and Republicans, is also included in the bill as a means to break the digital divide. Another focus of the bill, climate change, amounts to a total of $36 billion, with plans to fund emissions-free school buses and improved network of electric vehicle chargers. With such large price tag, only about half of the bill's total comes from new spending, while most of the $1.2 trillion total is made up of previously allocated funds. This more balanced approach to federal spending is likely what led 13 House Republicans to sign on to the bill, more than making up for the 6 progressive Democrats that voted no. President Biden has said that he will sign the bill into law come next week, when Congress reconvenes from their November recess. A mosh pit turned to violence at rapper Travis Scott's Astroworld Festival in Houston, Texas on November 5th. The crowd began to surge forward and get violent 2 hours before the rapper started performing, and eventually became so violent people were getting trampled throughout the venue. The tragedy ended with 8 confirmed deaths and more than 15 injured in the hospital. The deaths range from ages 14 to 27, and identities have not yet been confirmed. EMT had to administer Narcan to several victims, including a security officer that had an injection site in the neck. Police are investigating the event, and Scott released a statement stating, quote, "I'm honestly just devastated." After a short break, our reporters are going to have all your local news about protests, the election outcomes, and information about an outgoing court case.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, and welcome back to Newsnight. Most of the student body of the Pittsburgh Public School.
Some of the United States allies.
Thursday, the FBI was seen raiding.
Let's get started with today's forecast.
Today's high will only reach about 31 degrees.
It's looking a little cooler than we've seen in the past few weeks.
All this and more
All this and more
All this and more coming up on Newsnight.
coming up on Newsnight.
Coming up on Newsnight. Pennsylvania's largest private employer, UPMC, is currently facing the threat of a strike from its workers. On Friday, workers organized outside of the UPMC building in downtown Pittsburgh, urging the company to provide a $20-hour minimum wage, union rights, as well as increased health benefits to eliminate their medical debt. This past March, UPMC increased its entry-level hourly pay to $15 an hour. Workers say that the extra $5 would offset the extra work that has been incurred due to the facilities being short-staffed. The strike, which is planned for November 18th, includes workers ranging from pharmacy techs and nurses to housekeepers and valet drivers. In response to the workers' protests, UPMC announced that they will give all workers a 75-cent raise as well as a $500 bonus at the end of the month. These figures, however, do not satisfy the workers, who cite UPMC's tax-exempt status as a nonprofit, coupled with their $23 billion in revenue, as proof that they can provide more benefits. The upcoming strike has garnered backing from the Service Employees International Union, which has backed UPMC workers' attempts to unionize for years. The previous attempt in 2019 was upended when the National Labor Relations Board ruled that union representatives could not communicate with employees within the workplace. Many unsuccessful unionization attempts in the past, a history is on the side for UPMC in this upcoming strike. A longstanding member of Pittsburgh City Bureau has recently passed away. Reporter Aaron Ute has more information.
Pittsburgh police have announced the death of a veteran member of the city's bureau. Sergeant Timothy Werner, 49, died on Tuesday, November 2nd, early in the morning at UPMC Mercy following complications from COVID-19, the Public Safety Department said in a statement. This was the third death recently in the police bureau following the death of Officer Brian Rowland, 47, and Sergeant Richard Howe, 51, in October. Police said Rowland and Howe also died after struggling with complications from the virus. Werner was entering his 22nd year with the police bureau. A longtime officer in Zone 4 and 5, he was most recently a supervisor in the property room at police headquarters. Police Chief Scott Schubert said in a statement, quote, "It is with deep condolences that I learned of the passing of Sergeant Tim Werner. Tim has been a friend to many and dedicated public servant for the city for Pittsburgh for many years. It is going to be extremely difficult not to see Tim at the police headquarters every day," end quote. Werner, Rowland, and Howe's vaccination statuses were not yet released.
COVID-19 vaccine mandates are slowly becoming the new normal in the workforce, but not everyone is satisfied with the decision. Reporter Grace Lawrence has all the details about what Pittsburgh business employees were protesting just last week.
On Friday, November 5th, employees of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County protested against the vaccine mandate in front of the Allegheny County Courthouse in the City County building in downtown Pittsburgh. The national mandate from President Joe Biden states that workers at businesses with more than 100 employees are required to either get the vaccine or receive weekly COVID-19 tests. On a county level, county employees in the executive branch have until December 1st to show proof of vaccination, and City of Pittsburgh employees have until December 22nd. Those who fail to show proof of vaccination risk unpaid leave or termination. The protests of about 100 people made it clear they were not rallying against the vaccine itself, rather the right to choose not to be. Shaler resident Alex Schmidt stated for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, We are protesting against the vaccine mandates. We are promoting freedom of choice. If people want, by all means. But we're protesting the fact that it is being forced on us," end quote.
Municipal elections took place on November 2nd, and the results have been released. With 99.6% of precincts reporting, Allegheny County's voter turnout was 32%, which is around 10 to 15% higher than about 30 of the United States' major cities. Pittsburgh voters elected Democratic candidate Edward C. Gainey as the new mayor of Pittsburgh, historically making him the first black person to hold the position in the city. Kevin Kraus will remain as Allegheny County Sheriff as he ran unopposed. Additionally, Republican candidate Kevin Brobson beat out Maria McLaughlin for a spot on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and Megan Sullivan of the Republican Party was elected to the judge for the Pennsylvania Superior Court. Allegheny County also cast votes for judges of the Commonwealth Court, which were in favor of Republican Stacey Wallace and Democrat Lori Dumas. A political figure's wife is testifying that she has been the victim of abuse. Aaron Ute has more information about the case that is still developing in court.
The estranged wife of Sean Parnell, the Republican endorsed by former President Donald Trump for U.S. Senate in Pennsylvania, testified under oath Monday, November 1st, that she endured years of rage and abuse from him, including being choked until she had to bite him, according to KDKA News. Lori Parnell's testimony came during divorce and custody proceedings of their 3 school-aged children. In their suburban Pittsburgh home, Lori described that the family was, quote, walking on eggshells, and the minute he walked back into the house were petrified, end quote. At one point, Lori testified, quote, he tried to choke me on a couch, and I literally had to bite him, end quote, to get free from his strangling. Once after a Thanksgiving trip, Lori said that Sean followed her outside of their vehicle and left her alongside the highway during an argument when he told her to, quote, get an abortion, end quote. Lori also stated that he once slapped one of their children hard enough to leave welts through the back of the child's shirt. One time, Sean called Lori a whore and other obscenities while pinning her down. The Parnells have been living apart for at least 3 years, but have split custody of their 3 children. Sean was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder after serving in Afghanistan, which he has been open about, along with a brain injury that he suffers from. In a statement during his campaign, Sean disputed Lori's claims and said he would, quote, set the record straight, end quote. The hearing is set to resume within a week.
The 2022 Clean Energy Ministerial for Mission Innovation will be held in Pittsburgh. Grace Lawrence has all the information about the event and what this means for Pittsburgh.
On Friday, November 5th, the U.S. Department of Energy announced that Pittsburgh will host the 2022 Clean Energy Ministerial for Mission Innovation next September. Secretary of the Department of Energy, Jennifer M. Granholm, made the announcement at the United Nations Conference of Parties. 31 countries that make up the Clean Energy Ministerial and Mission Innovation plan to come to Pittsburgh to discuss enacting climate policies and further advance the research, design, and development of carbon-negative technologies and clean energy. Mayor of Pittsburgh, Bill Patuto, shared his pride in the city of Pittsburgh from Trib Lives, stating, quote, the city of Pittsburgh is proud and pleased to be chosen to host the 2022 Clean Energy Ministerial Mission Innovation to bring leaders from around the world to share ideas about turning our industrial regions into regions of opportunity for sustainable energy, end quote. Pittsburgh was chosen by the federal government because of its commitment to innovation and adapting to a new focus on sustainability, technology, research, and development.
Nurul Haq Fazleh, an Afghanistan native living in Pittsburgh since 2016, has been involved in the recent efforts to help refugees removed from Afghanistan create better lives in the area after the Taliban takeover in August. Fazleh works with a Squirrel Hill-based nonprofit called Jewish Family and Community Services. His job at JFCS is an employment specialist, which means he helps refugees find work that fits their skill sets, prepare for interviews, build their resumes, and adjust to the U.S. work culture. In an interview reported on by the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Fazleh said, quote, I was in that situation and know how important it was to receive that support, end quote. JFCS expects to receive up to 250 refugees via an international humanitarian group. Coming up after the break, we'll have your weekly weather report for the city, as well as a heartwarming story about everyone's favorite insect. This past week's weather has shown all its sides: warm, cold, rainy, sunny. We'll kick it over to Craig Frykowski with this week's weather report.
Thanks, Nick. Let's start it off with today's weather. The high for today is going to be 57 degrees. The day will be mostly sunny with a few passing showers throughout. There is a 56% chance of rain all day. At night, the temperature is looking to drop to around 37 degrees. We won't be seeing much rain overnight, though. The probability is at a low 11%. Did you know that the record high temperature for today was in 1902 at 74 degrees, but the lowest recorded temperature was just 23 degrees back in 2019? Now let's take a look at this upcoming week. The week is going to start off pretty high with that 57-degree temperature today, but it's going to dip down to the high 40s later in the week. The coldest day of the week are Monday and Tuesday with a high of 49 degrees. Thankfully, we're not seeing any rain or snow this week just yet. Monday will be mostly sunny, and Wednesday and Thursday will be all sun. It looks like it'll be a nice week ahead of us, so take some time to get outside and get your vitamin D. That's all I have for you this week. Back to you, Nick.
A lone monarch butterfly was just found by workers in the Jester Park Nature Center in Granger, Iowa. They realized it would need to get to a warmer climate so that it could make it through winter. They ended up making a Facebook post asking for help. Patty Loving, who was originally from Texas, already had a flight booked to the state and quickly contacted Southwest Airlines, saying, quote, "I couldn't say no." Loving actually helped to raise and release monarch butterflies in Iowa before she moved to Texas. The airline responded, allowing the transport to happen. The Nature Center packed the butterfly in an envelope with its wings spread and then placed it into a sealed container inside of a cooler. This put it into a hibernation-like state. The butterfly had no issues being transported and remained healthy. It was released in a community garden for refugee butterflies in San Antonio. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Newsnight. I'm Nick Konopka, and from everyone here at Newsnight, have a fun and safe weekend. We'll see you next week.